Black people living in Germany during the Nazi era faced racist violence, discrimination, and constant threats. Around this time, the Deutsche Afrikaschau was a human zoo that toured Germany from 1937 to 1940. The participants were subjected to racist and colonial violence, but at the same time dared to challenge the structures of white supremacy.
During the Nazi era, when they were all in danger of, being brought to concentration camps even, they dared to criticize the white supremacy. For instance, comparing African dances to traditional Bavarian dances, saying it's rather quite the same. You can imagine that Germans at this time in the 1930s were very upset to be compared in their traditions to Africans. In the end, this human zoo was in a way made impossible in its intentions by colonized people and their children who resisted the very idea of being displayed as second-class people.
One of the people who performed and resisted at the Deutsche Afrikaschau was Kwasi Bruce. During the Nazi era, finding a job was impossible for him because of the color of his skin. But this was not the first experience at a human zoo for Kwasi Bruce. Kwasi Bruce was brought to Germany at the age of 3 as part of the 1896 colonial exhibition.
There were very complex reasons and different reasons for people to take part, and they were not always forced to do this, though of course they were all acting under colonial conditions.
In order to understand these conditions, we have to look at the history of human zoos in Germany. Kwasi Bruce and 105 other people were brought from Togo, Cameroon, and other German colonial territories in Africa and the Pacific. For 6 months, they were subjected to racist and colonial violence, made to sit for more than 12 hours in model villages, instructed on how to act as Africans by a white trainer, made to cook, eat, and fight each other to entertain paying white guests. The extreme dramatizations of their existence and cultures was supported by scientists who also used them for racist research.
They were so-called scientists, whatsoever the case, who will come to measure how thick your lips are, how wide your nose is.
Their studies were aimed at proving the superiority of the white race and the inferiority of the black race. In so doing, the zoos could frame themselves as places of learning and as such were exempted from a 40% income tax. In the 6 months the exhibition was open, it attracted over 2 million guests. This was neither the first nor the last of its kind in Germany.
I know there were 30 to 40 in Berlin.
This colonial exhibition was already done in Paris, in New York, and in London.
The story of human zoos is not just the story of people who were gawked at, laughed at, and looked at. It is a story of people who dared to look back. Looking back like Kwasi Bruce did in the 1930s at Bavarian culture, but also looking back in the more obvious way.
There was this young guy, he has these binoculars. When the Germans came, and then they were watching. And what he did, he took his binoculars and he was watching the Germans.
This is a story of survivors. One of those survivors was Martin Debobe, who came from Cameroon as a teenager.
He remained and he started to be the first black who drive the subway trains. And in that photo we have it, where you find he's been shown with his 2 colleagues, and it was hanging always there in Harlesh's store. But there in Harlesh's store, they removed it when we started in 2005 talking a lot about colonialism, talking about the photo itself, because for them, they were very proud to show that how social the Germans are. Even those times, Africans were working hand in hand with the Germans, with the white and so on, because There's a proudness of that. But when we start talking about how this person came in here, and he stayed, and then they really snatched it very quick out of there.
Indeed, it is also the story of an enforced silence on the legacy and history of these structures today. People like Martin de Bober are remembered by signs on the streets, but Berlin's architecture, streets, train stations, and collective unconscious are still shaped by human zoos and their rationalization of racism. Those same streets have also been occupied in many ways than one by Black people who are not only engaged in the fight to uncover a silenced past, but to create a just future.